Face Off podcast, the show where we discuss Flyers hockey and nothing but Flyers hockey. So help us God. I am your host, Kevin Fortier. You can follow me on Twitter at KS Fortier and the show at Flyers Face Off. We are back from our COVID hiatus. Now we're ready to come back and cover the Flyers with some excitement and from the fans' perspectives. Last season obviously was very disappointing. We're hoping that the Flyers are going to have a really successful offseason and return in September ready to make a deep playoff run. So let's get started. Tonight I am very happy to have a member of the Flyers Nitty Gritty team who covers the AHL and the Phantoms as well as other Flyers related topics. I am pleased to introduce Samantha Wismer. Sam, welcome to the show, and please tell everyone a bit about you and where they can follow you and your writings.
Well, you can follow me on flyersnittygritty.com. Also, my articles do go up onto Bleacher Report. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Samantha Wismer.
And I recommend that everybody does follow Sam. So we've got a full show here, so why don't we go ahead and jump right in. Sam had recently written an article about the importance of the AHL and the Phantoms. This is a crucial topic as the Flyers are expected to add potentially a couple of young guys that spent some time with the Phantoms last year and made their debuts with the Flyers. And probably at least one of them is hoping to be on the Flyers opening night roster, and the others will continue their growth down with the Phantoms. And then we've got a couple more guys who signed entry-level contracts who will be making their professional debuts with the Phantoms this year. We will discuss all of these potential additions and the rest of the Phantoms roster in a bit. But for now, Sam, why don't you take us through the highlights of your article and why the AHL system is critical to the future of the Flyers?
Okay. The AHL obviously has a very big role, especially with the Flyers. And the one highlight I made was the wave of players that are coming up, like Cam York, Tanner Lazinski, Wade Allison, even Igor Zamola. They all made their debuts in the 2021 season, especially Wade Allison. Wade Allison just came in and took over, took minutes from Knack. Just seeing these young players, and the team is going to look very different in 2 years.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And obviously, this offseason is going to be key with the expansion draft. Whether or not the Flyers can move some of their anchor contracts and make room for some new blood, there are a couple of big additions that they're looking to make. Obviously, they need to get in a top right-hand defenseman, but they also be making room for some of the young guys coming up. One of the guys that isn't necessarily in this mix right here because he missed basically the entire year was Morgan Frost.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been great if he had been able to spend a little bit of time on the Phantoms and continue growing his game, but he'll obviously look to come back and hit the ice running, so to speak.
I think he's going to come back. Well, obviously he's going to come back. He had a shoulder injury, and they will more than likely start him out on the Phantoms. And coming from my perspective, with Lehigh Valley, we are more than happy to see Morgan Frost on the ice.
Yeah, that'll be exciting to see him down there. Last year was really crazy. Obviously, they only had a handful of teams, and they played everybody something like 12 times. And you had the taxi squad, so there were guys who should have been on the Phantoms last year who basically sat idle for the year, which is really unfortunate. They weren't able to get any of that game time on, either with the Flyers or with the Phantoms.
They would send them up to the taxi squad and then send them back down for 3 or 4 games and then send them back up to the taxi squad and just sit there.
Yep.
Make a good point. I'm going to make a point of Alex Lyon. He sat on the taxi squad. He got sent back down to the AHL for 3 or 4 games just so he could get that playing time. He played 1 game for 1 period. And then they actually got turned around on the ice because someone on the Devils tested positive for COVID.
I remember that. Yep.
So then he goes back up to the taxi squad, sits there until everyone's cleared on Lehigh Valley. Then they send him back down for 3 games and then send him back up. And, obviously Carter Hart got injured, so he sat as backup. Played a couple games, but sat as backup. So he didn't have the best of years. He's not a great NHL goalie. I'm going to say that. He is an AHL goalie, and he can provide a lot of insight to these younger goalies that are coming up, like Sam Ersson, Felix Sandstrom, Kirill Ustimenko.
Exactly.
He can provide and mentor these guys, but I think it's going to take a lot of convincing him to do that.
Yeah, if he resigns, right? Because as of now, I haven't seen anything where the Flyers have re-signed him. So
Yes, he is a unrestricted free agent right now.
yeah, a couple other guys that really could have used the playing time. Carson Tawinski, Connor Bunneman. They sat on the taxi squad, played a little bit here or there for the Flyers, played a handful of games down with the Phantoms, but for the most part, sat idle, collecting dust all season.
Yeah, I definitely saw Bunneman there at the Phantoms games when he wasn't sitting idle with the taxi squad. We saw Twarynski there, and even Sam Marin. I mean, Sam played games with the Flyers a lot more than some of the guys.
Yeah, his use, that was one of the things that really frustrated me with AV, the way that Sam was getting used down the stretch. He'd play a game, he'd sit for a week and a half or to 2 weeks. He'd play maybe 2 games, then he'd sit for, another week and a half. It was kind of strange. And they said, well, you don't want to play him all the time, but then maybe get a little bit more, play one, sit 2 or 3, play one, sit, 2, something that to get a little bit better of a normal rotation, and get him a little bit more playing time because he barely had played hockey for the last 2 years
Because of his injuries. Why keep him sitting if you know that on defense we needed the physicality? We needed his physicality.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big thing with the Flyers back end is extremely soft. He was the only guy, that was throwing bodies around, that could clear the crease if needed, could protect the other, players on the ice, drop the gloves if somebody was taking runs at some of the Flyers, younger or more skilled players, because they really didn't have anybody that was willing to do that.
Exactly. And Sam has always been that way. There was a game back in 2018 with the Phantoms, and I actually have video of it on my phone that Sam just ragdolled Mike Aviani around like it was nothing.
I remember that video. Yeah, he's a beast. He is definitely a beast.
But you know what? He is the nicest person off the ice.
That's what I always hear. Great guy, really, kind of low key, down to earth, nice guy off the ice, but you just do not want to get on his bad side on the ice.
Just throwing a little bit of a fact out there. He's actually still in the area.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he didn't go like back to where he's from.
Okay. Well, hopefully he'll have a strong off season, get, in the best of shape. A couple of the other guys on the Flyers back end, I've posted a few times that if I was the coach at the end of the season, I would have told Travis Sanheim and Phil Myers that if if they don't put on at least 10 to 15 pounds of muscle, that they shouldn't bother showing up to camp in September. So those guys have got to get a little bit more muscle and play a little bit more of a physical game, because they were just getting beat left and right on defense, and that should not be happening.
That, and I think AV kept the pairing similar all season, which can be a good thing and can be a bad thing at the same time.
What do you think of the news that the Flyers hired Ian LaPerriere, their former penalty killing coach and player development type guy, to be the head coach for the Phantoms. Do you have any concerns about his lack of coaching experience other than on the PK?
It's always going to be a concern, uh, but I think with him being under AV and knowing that part of the coaching, a podcast I was on last week, they said, it could bridge the gap between going from the Phantoms to going to the Flyers for some of these guys who do get called up. It won't be as much of a shock because, it's rumored that AV isn't always the nicest to the younger players. I say give him a chance, see what he can do. It's going to be a transition. He's going from assistant coach to head coach. For one, I'm excited to see what he can do.
Okay, and one of the themes that I've heard about him, obviously, well, I mean, everybody knows that he's always in great shape. He's very big on fitness, being in the best conditioning possible when he shows up, when he showed up to play. Even as a coach, he stayed in great shape. He pushes conditioning. That's something that Yuriv was actually talking about when I was on his show a couple weeks ago. Was that he's going to make sure that these young players are in the absolute best condition when they show up to play, and there and you can understand to some extent that with COVID and all that stuff that maybe not everybody was showed up or stayed in the best possible shape during the season last year because it was so crazy and up and down with time off, and that may be one of his areas where he really helps the players from that perspective as well.
Definitely. And just by his interviews that he did when he got hired, how they do all those press conferences with the new coach. I just think that he's going to be a player's coach. He's going to form those relationships with these players, but he's also not going to take any guff from these young kids. And they are young kids on this team. I mean, there's a couple of older guys, AHL veterans, but I don't think that he's going to take any guff. And I think that's something that's needed. I think he will do fine.
Okay, well, that's good to get your perspective on that. So what have you heard about potential assistant coaches, guys that he might bring in, maybe someone here or there that might have a little bit more coaching experience or more experience with, well, as far as more experience with the Flyers organization, but anything that you've heard from that perspective?
The only thing that I've heard, and it's a possible rumor, is Danny Briere, which would be, I think it would be phenomenal.
I think that would be really good too. He was always just a great locker room guy, great guy in general. You never heard a bad thing about Danny Briere.
No, he seems like a really nice guy too.
Yep.
And he's
Okay.
still very involved with the Flyers organization, which is always nice to see.
Yeah, I remember way back when it looked like the Flyers were gonna end up buying him out, and you could tell he was really emotional about that. He really wanted to stay with the team. His family's in the area. He likes the area, so that'll be a nice addition if that ends up happening.
Yeah, I'm totally agree with that.
So looking at guys that might be looking to make a run on the to the Flyers opening night roster, obviously the two big names that were being talked about, and guys that the first couple guys to make their to get the call ups last year, Tanner Lisinski and Wade Allison. Unfortunately, Tanner ended up having that hip injury and had surgery. He missed what would have been the rest of the season for him up there, which really was unfortunate because I wanted to see. I've been waiting to for him to get his shot. And Wade Allison came up. He played really well. his playing time, increased. I mean, everywhere they put him on the ice, he seemed to succeed. So, other than so, well, as far as those two, what are your thoughts about potential opening night rosters?
Potential opening night rosters. Obviously, I mean, the two you just mentioned could definitely make a run for it. Igor Zamula, if he definitely puts on some weight, he needs to put on some weight and just gets a little bit better with his skating, he could definitely make a run for it.
What do you think Wade Allison's chances of making the opening night roster are, and where do you see Lisinski when the season starts up?
Wade, I think he could very well be on the opening night roster. I don't think he's going to come back down to the Phantoms. He's too good for the Phantoms. Way too good for the Phantoms. Lisinski, on the other hand, with his torn hip labrum and just coming back from an injury, I think they're going to want to start him out slower. So I don't think he'll be on opening night, but I could be wrong. Another name, Mr. York.
Yes.
I could see Cam York possibly being on opening night roster. Possibly. Depending what moves are made during the off season here. July is going to be a very busy month for the Flyers. I think Cam York is not going to be with the Phantoms very long.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think he may, and again, there's so much that's unknown because we've got to go through the expansion draft and free agency and all that stuff, trades and everything to see where where camp, who's going to be even showing up at camp to be able to try to make some of these assumptions. But if I had to guess, I would say he would probably start with the Phantoms, but like you said, he might not be down there all that long. And just circling back on Wade Allison, like you said, I mean, he played 10 games for the Phantoms. He had 4 goals, 9 points. And he just was a beast out there. He's +8. He looked so great, and when he went up to the Flyers, it seemed like he was always in on the play when he was on the ice and had a chance at making a creating a scoring chance. Whether it was his two-way play, coming in back checking on guys, forcing turnovers, playing on the power play. He looks strong out there. He's a great passer. He's got phenomenal hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's as close to a lock as I would want to go for making the opening night roster.
And also, I know that he is a right winger, but he showed some physicality at the last Phantoms game this past season. There was a player on the Penguins, and no, it was the Devils. It was the Devils. I'm sorry. It was the now Utica Devils, I believe it might be. He just got angry, and there was a fight, and the shirt came off, and I'm pretty sure he could have taken his whole uniform off. He would have to fight because he just made him that mad, and it was from the beginning of the game, and it happened within like the last say 6 minutes of the game that he just got pissed, to put it simple. And yeah, he just wailed out on this guy. I was like, I never expected that from Wade. Wade seemed like a very calm player, and I'm sure he is, but just seeing the physicality from him shocked me.
Well, he had some nice hits up on the Flyers as well. He did play a physical game even when he was up with the Flyers. And the knock on him had always been he had so many injuries in college, and was he going to be able to hold up? Was he going to be able to have a physical edge to his game? I mean, because he's got a rocket for a shot. I mean, and it's accurate. He gets it on net. He's got so much skill.
Oh yeah.
But it's nice to see that physical edge as well.
And so does Tanner. Tanner
Yep.
also has a very good shot, and I absolutely cannot wait to see what he can do in the NHL because Tanner is an amazing player.
Yeah, I've been a huge fan of his. Ever since he got drafted, I've been following him. He's a phenomenal two-way guy. He's so aggressive without the puck. He's just tenacious. I've been looking forward to him. He was actually my dark horse to make the roster out of camp this past season, but unfortunately he got injured and he didn't even make it to camp. He'll start with the Phantoms like you said, and hopefully it won't be too long before he makes it up there. I think something like him, Lawton, and Obey Kubel would just be a tremendous fourth line for the Flyers, assuming they don't bring in other guys to play in that role.
That would be a nice line. That's three Phantoms right there.
Yep. And Obey Kubel's another one. I've been a huge proponent of his for the last couple of seasons. I was like screaming from the top of my lungs. It's like, and when we went through the whole Chris Stewart debacle, it's like, what are you doing? You've got Obey Kubel who just played circles around Chris Stewart in camp, and you send him down and you keep Chris Stewart. I was just out of my mind. But he needs to get in shape. He needs to find his edge again as well, because he definitely took a step back this past season.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of shocked at how he played this season because that's not like him.
Yeah.
I mean, just from watching him on the Phantoms, that just
So one other potential long shot that's been talked about would be Tyson Forster, who got the great opportunity to play with the Phantoms this season, and he played really well. Unfortunately, he's in the position where it's either the Flyers or it's back to the Canadian Junior League, assuming that they end up playing this year. Because if they do play, he won't be allowed to play for the Phantoms because he'll only be 19.
yeah,
Um,
turn 20 until January.
yeah.
I love Tyson, absolutely love him, and if the AHL changes their age requirement here, very well be back. Another one that if they change the age requirement, Zade Wisdom, when if they do get sent back to the OHL where they are playing in the junior league, they were part of the reason the Phantoms did so good this past season. Zade is just wicked good. I can't even explain to people who haven't been to a Phantoms game this past season and watch him, or have watched, highlights of him or anything. I can't explain how good this kid is at only 18 years old.
Yeah, he was the youngest guy to ever make his debut with the Phantoms, wasn't he?
He's the youngest guy in Phantoms history.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely think that Tyson Forster is too good for the OHL. It'd be a shame if he does end up having to go back, but unfortunately, those are the rules. So there was a couple of players, both from Sweden, who signed entry level deals and who were potentially going to be making their pro debuts. Uh, One is the Flyers goalie prospect, Samuel Urson, and the other one is forward Ollie Lixel. Now, there's a lot more confusion around Lixel. Seems like every day I see a different story written up about him as far as where he's going to end up playing. But there's a couple of guys who could be making their professional debuts with the Flyers organization this coming fall as well.
Yes, and right now, uh, on the podcast I was on last week, we talked about it. We're in a goalie logjam right now. Right now, we have Alex Lyon. We have Brian Elliott, who's leaving, or possibly leaving.
Yeah, most likely.
We don't know what's going on with Moose right now. You have Brian Elliott, who's a free agent. You have Alex Lyon, who's an unrestricted free agent. You have Felix Sandstrom. We also have Kirill Ustimenko coming back. Now we have Samuel Ersson. And possibly Zane McIntyre.
You think they'll bring McIntyre back?
I hope they do. He was also part of the reason we did so well. McIntyre is an amazing goalie, and I wish people could see that.
No, he's a great goalie. I was just thinking as far as, I mean, you've already got three young goalie prospects there. Is there going to be enough playing time to move around if they
We
bring
also,
McIntyre back?
we also have to remember that the ECHL is going back in season. They need goalies. I think that at one point, I mean, to start out, Erson and Ustamenko could be the goalies for the Reading Royals, who are the ECHL team of the Flyers. But we still need two goalies in Lehigh Valley. That's what I mean by like we are in a goalie situation right now.
Yeah, well, and Sandstrom did end up his first season playing uh, down at Reading, um, and he did not do well, which really shocked me. I mean, his numbers were not good at all.
As as Felix progressed and got more playing time during the season, you could definitely see his confidence build up. And that's what made him, get on the map a little bit was just seeing his confidence build. And that's one reason I love watching the AHL guys. I love watching them build their skills, build their confidence. I wasn't the biggest fan of Felix, but just watching him through the games that he played, I was just like, where's this coming from? But he definitely was the surprise of the season, and I hope he stays. Honestly,
Yeah. Well, and when the news broke that he had signed to go play over in Sweden, I mean, I was like, what the heck is this?
and, and
He
then
played so well.
and then the next day it was like, psych, he's coming back.
Yeah, exactly. And then whoops, never mind. Uh,
I said this. I said this last week. Funny story about that. I had already written an article and sent it to Jamie about is re-signing Alex Lyon a possibility. And then not even 90 minutes after I sent it to Jamie, the news broke about Felix Sandstrom, and I'm texting him and I'm like, I just wrote this article for nothing. And he's like, we can relax, we can finagle it. I was like, that's not the point.
yeah, it's been interesting with some of the stories that have come out. But yeah, I mean, he certainly was the big story at for the ending the last few weeks of the Phantoms. I mean, the way that he just dominated in net. So hopefully he'll be able to pick up where he left off. Ustamenko obviously missed the entire season. He's coming off an injury, so it would probably make sense that he might start off down at Reading. Do they re-sign Lyon? Do they re-sign McIntyre? That's going to shape where a lot of that ends up happening as well.
McIntyre is also about to turn 29 years old, so he is older. Alex is also going to be 29 this year. So, it's not necessarily a good thing for the older guy. So we want to see the young guys in net, but is it always good to have the young guy in net? We don't know. Carter Hart is definitely an exception to that.
Yeah, he's another one that really needs to find his confidence again.
Yeah, I think this off season is gonna do him some good. He wasn't seeing his family. He didn't see his family for like 6 months. He, and he battles with anxiety. He came out and he said he battles with anxiety. And being a goalie, I cannot imagine the amount of pressure that he feels in net. And you have the fans who are just like, oh, well, Carter Hart sucks. Send him back down to AHL. That's not how this works.
Well, and that was kind of, I was a bit surprised because of that I saw that he had parted ways with his long-term sports psychologist.
hmm I think they gave him another one, but I believe that did they part ways or did the psychiatrist leave? I don't know what happened there.
Okay.
It wasn't made super clear, but
There was one bit of news. The Phantoms captain Cal O'Reilly re-signed. I saw that hit today. We
I'm
had,
so excited. I love Cal. He's a great captain.
yeah, so that's good news to have his leadership out there. We had also seen that they had re-signed German Rubtsov and Lena Sandin. Rubtsov played over in the KHL this past season. I think this is, I don't know if it's totally make or break this, but this is definitely, I think, going to be one of his last shots at whether he's really going to do anything in the organization or not.
I think this is like, if you don't do well this season, that's it. And we also, it hasn't come out yet, but we also just re-signed Garrett Wilson, who is
Okay.
our left winger on the Phantoms. He is an AHL contract. He is from Ontario. But he's a great player, and he was also one of our alternate captains next to Tyler Wotherspoon.
That gets into, I wanted to get to kind of just go through not necessarily lines or D pairs, but the potential roster for the Phantom. So we talked about the goalies. I mean, we know we've got Ustamenko, Sandstrom, and Ersson, possibly the re-signing of Alex Lyon or McIntyre. On defense, we've got Cam York, Wyatt Wiley, we got Igor Zamula, Mason Millman. He will be age eligible. He's actually going to be 20 in July, I think.
Yes, he's about to turn 20 on the 18th.
Yep, the day before me, as a matter of fact.
Early birthday.
Thanks. Hogberg is signed. Now Logan Day was on an AHL contract. Do you know if he has any more time on that or if he needs to be re-signed?
I'm not positive. I would have to check on that.
Okay. And then the UFAs, Wotherspoon, Prosser, Bigra, and Derek Pouliot.
I can see Derek coming back.
Yeah, I think he comes back. I'd like to see Bigra come back as well. I don't really, if Wotherspoon or Prosser don't come back, I'm not going to be all that broken up. Although Prosser is the only other right shot D, I think, if Day isn't signed.
Yeah, Tyler shoots left.
Yeah. So with York potentially going up at some point, obviously they need a couple more guys to shore up the D. So you got to think at least 2 or 3 of these guys will get signed if they don't bring in somebody else from a different team. On right wing, and some of these guys are listed at playing multiple positions. What I've got down here, Wade Allison, but we think he's going to make it to the Phantoms. You've got Sushko, potentially Ollie Lixel, Lena Sandin. So on left wing, they've got Isaac Ratcliffe, who I'm really hoping is going to have a breakout season. You know, the big guys, they always say take a little bit more time. I've seen some of the Flyers Twitterverse get rather impatient with him and say he's a bust, but I think that's just crazy.
He's not.
He's got awesome speed. He plays on both the power play and the penalty kill. He's got to gain more confidence. He's got to gain a little bit more muscle and work on his shot. But yeah, go ahead.
He's a big boy. He is 6'6", 200 pounds. You gotta give the kid time.
Yeah. So they've got Willman, who's also he's listed as a center or left wing. Torinsky. They still got Matthew Strome, who spent he actually didn't spend any time playing with Reading because they didn't have a team this year. But
Matt Strome went to a different ECHL team. We loaned him out.
So he could always potentially make strides and make a return to the Phantoms. His skating has always been the big issue with him, and I just don't know if he's ever going to be able to skate well enough to make it at the pro level. What are your thoughts on him?
Matt Strome is a great player. I do agree with his skating that the back checking kind of hurts him. He can't keep up with the plays as much, but
Yeah.
I mean, other than that, he's a great player.
Yeah, he's got a great shot. I mean, he put up a ton of goals in the juniors. I mean, he's got his brothers are pretty successful at the, NHL level. Was kind of hoping he might follow in their footsteps. So we'll see what happens with him. So down the middle, we've got Lisinski, Jackson Cates, who they just signed, Rupsov,
I'm
potentially.
so excited to see Kate. Definitely excited for that.
Yeah. I was hoping that his brother was going to forego his final year and turn pro, but it looks like that's not going to happen.
Yeah, didn't Noah already say that he was going to finish his last year of college?
Yeah, he's going back. So for free agents, Andy Andrioff, who is a center, Pascal Laberge, who I refuse to discuss, um, Connor Bunneman, David Kasha.
Kosh is good on the AHL level. NHL, eh.
Yeah, I mean they need some more bodies, so they'll end up signing some of these guys. And also on AHL contracts, you had mentioned re-signing of Wilson, Ryan Fitzgerald, Chris Mueller, Saulnier, who actually was a lot of fun to watch this year. For a
I
small
loved
guy, he's rather he's scrappy.
I loved watching Brennan Saunier this year. It was like a breath of fresh air.
He's another one that I think tore off most of his clothing in one game there.
How about every game?
Yeah.
He is just I he's great, and I'm so excited to watch him for a full season. He reminds me of Curtis Gabriel a little bit, who Curtis has done phenomenal. He's now an NHL player, which I'm so glad he's gotten a chance. He's I believe he's a Shark now.
Yep.
Great guy, great player. I can't say enough good things about Curtis. Brennan reminds me of him.
Oh, okay. They also have a couple of lesser known guys. I think it's Tyson McMaster and
Tanner,
Kadem
Tanner,
Tanner McMaster. Okay, and Kademi, who
uh, Ralph Kademi.
yeah, I don't think he played all that much, but
He didn't play all that much, but when he did play, he actually made goals.
pretty much rounds up again. You usually see suddenly they'll, during free agency they'll sign 3, 4, 5 guys to fill out the AHL rosters, but I mean, most of these guys obviously we'll see on the Phantoms again. Like you said, we've got the logjam in net. We definitely need some more bodies on the back end, and then they just need to fill out some of the forward roles. But I'm hoping, like I said, good things out of Ratcliffe, Cates. I think Sandin is a really he's a good solid guy, two-way player. Good on the PK. Hopefully, Rupsov might find his game, although he didn't really do anything over in Russia this year. Lisinski will most likely be starting out with the Phantom, so he'll be strong. Some of the other AHL UFA guys to kind of fill out the roster there.
All I know is that this writer is super excited for
Yeah.
start.
Well, I order the AHL package every year, and I watch most of the games. Especially because we've had the last 4 or 5 seasons such a the big draft crop that we hadn't had in so long. So you've been able to follow the guys from the juniors up through the Phantoms making their pro debuts and then potentially going up to the Flyers. So it's been a lot more exciting from that perspective for me anyway, than it had been for a while, where it was just kind of the AHL was kind of its own, the Phantoms were kind of its own thing, and you really weren't seeing very many guys coming up,
Yeah,
being grown organically up through the system.
I've said this on podcasts I've been on before. The the 2019-2020 season before it got canceled, the Phantoms had possibly their worst season.
Mm-hmm.
It was horrible. It was hard to watch. At that time, I wasn't writing. I was, um, you know, a fan. I have season tickets to watch that team. It was hard. It was hard every game to watch that team. A lot of the guys were veterans at that point. They just looked tired. They looked worn out. They didn't gel well together as a team.
No.
And you could tell they didn't gel well. It was just like watching it. I hate saying this, like it was like watching a train wreck
Yeah.
every night. You know, I don't know how else to say that, because if you don't watch the Phantoms, if you don't go to the games, if you don't really keep up with it was bad. I think we went on a streak of maybe 5 games in a row that we won. It was just like the defense was horrible for the Phantoms.
Yeah, yeah. Their defense was atrocious last year. And I thought actually going into it, it had the potential to be exciting because we figured that Frost was going to be there. Joel Farabee was going to be down there, but he ended up playing like 3 games, scored like 5 or 6 points, and they yanked him up to the Flyers. So yeah, there weren't a lot of young good guys that I had been looking forward to seeing, and on the roster last year, and yeah, it was kind of a train wreck. But all right. Well, anything else that as far as the Phantoms of the AHL you want to touch on before we wrap up?
No, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Well, this was fun. I'm glad we got a chance to go over your article, talk about the Phantoms and the importance of the AHL. So, just once again, real quick, why don't you just tell people where they can follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter at Samantha Wismer.
All right. And you can follow me at KS Fortier, and you can follow the show at Flyers Face Off. Thanks everybody for listening in, and we will be back soon with a new and exciting show. And that is all. Good night.